The next topic I'd like to review is reviewing triangles. And trigonometry is really involved with the study of triangles. So I think it's a good idea to spend a little time and talk about some basic properties of triangles. Now, why don't we start by drawing a triangle? A triangle, of course, it has three sides. Trying my best to draw here, it's not always easy. It's not too bad. So here's a triangle, okay? Now, these are the three angles, and these are the three sides, okay? And I would say probably the most important property of a triangle is involving these three angles. And what is the property? I think you know. If you add these three angles up, you always get 180, right? So I'll just write that down. So if you add the three angles of a triangle, you always get 180 degrees. And that's, a really, really important property of the triangle. And basically what it means is if you know two of the angles, you can always find the third one, right? For example, maybe if this angle here is 88 degrees and this angle is 62 degrees, how much would this angle be? Well, we can just find this angle like this. We go 180, subtract 62, subtract 88. And what is that? 100, I think it's 30 degrees, right? I'm just going to verify that on the calculator. I should be able to do it in my head, but it's 30 degrees. Now, that was pretty easy to find that missing angle. We just take 180 minus one of the angles minus the other one. What some people do, other people, like they would maybe go 62 plus 88, and they'd say that's 150, right, degrees, and then go 180 minus 150 and get 30 degrees, which is the same answer as we just got over here. Either way is okay. I think this is a little bit more professional here, but this works as well. Another thing I want to say is in this course, and in pretty much every geometry course from now on, when we draw diagrams, we are not drawing them to scale, okay? What that means is if you take your protractor out, you remember your protractor? It's like a half moon. It's got little marks on the edges, and you can measure angles with them. If you take your protractor out and you try to measure this angle, and it's like, if this is like, pretend this is a piece of paper, okay? And if you take the protractor out and you measure this angle and it doesn't turn out to be 62, you shouldn't be surprised, because this drawing is not to scale, so that this angle is just a representation of what the angle is. It's not necessarily the exact value. Okay, the picture is just a representation of the triangle. It's not an exact duplicate of the triangle. Okay, and same thing as here. This is not 88 degrees. Don't be surprised, because this triangle is just a picture, and we're not drawing it to scale. And this is true also if you're having with like a typewritten document and everything, right? We never measure angles with a protractor in this course. And also, say a ruler. You know what a ruler is, of course. If this is, say, I don't know, 3 inches or something, and you take your ruler and you measure that and it's not 3 inches, don't be surprised, because our our diagrams are not drawn to scale. So I just wanted to mention that. Okay, let's continue on with looking at a special kind of triangle, which is called a right triangle. Okay, in this course, we're going to focus really on right triangles, so we should spend a little time discussing what a right triangle is. First of all, what is a right angle? Well, a right angle, sorry about that, my phone was ringing there. So a right angle is just a fancy way to say it's an angle that measures 90 degrees. A right angle is a 90-degree angle. And my drawing is not the best here, but these should be two straight lines, and they should intersect in a square, like a corner of a square. Okay, and then we write this little symbol in here. Whenever you see that symbol, that means that it's 90 degrees. Okay. And I want to say this as well. If you ever see a picture, let's say you're looking at a picture, okay, of some geometry, and maybe you see this picture here, and you say to yourself, well, that kind of looks like 90 degrees. But what I want to say is if that little symbol is not there, this little half square here, if that symbol is not there, you're not allowed to assume that's 90 degrees, okay? Maybe your eye is not fine enough to be able to tell the difference between a 90-degree angle and a 91-degree angle, or an 89-degree angle, right? So if you have a geometry picture and there's no little square there, you're not allowed to assume that's 90 degrees, okay? If that little square is there, then you can say with certainty that that's 90 degrees. Otherwise, you're not allowed to assume that. Okay, so let me tell you what a right triangle is then. It's very easy once you know what a right angle is. A right triangle is a triangle with a right angle. Now that sounds a little strange maybe. You know, all it means is a right triangle is just a triangle which has a 90-degree angle. Okay? Let's try to draw one here. And like I said, we have to be sure that this is 90 degrees here, we have to put that little symbol in, right? That symbol guarantees that it's 90. Okay. So that's a right triangle. It's just a triangle which has a right angle, right? That is a special property of a triangle because there's lots of triangles which do not have a right angle, right? For example, I can draw this triangle here. So this triangle does not have a right angle, and we can actually do trigonometry on triangles which don't have a right angle, but not in this course. Okay, that's going to be the next course in trigonometry part 2. We're going to study that. We're just starting out in trigonometry in this course, so we're just going to focus our attention on right triangles, and it makes things quite a bit easier. And that's fine since we're just starting out. Maybe just quickly I'll also mention that, in a right triangle, these two angles are smaller than 90. Remember the word for an angle that's smaller than 90? It's an acute angle, right? This angle and this angle are acute angles. I just wanted to mention that. Okay, let's continue on, and I want to mention one more thing about right triangles, but I want to get a new sheet first. Alright, let's continue. I just discovered in Photoshop a cool way to make a triangle here. And that looks a lot better than the ones we had before, huh? So let's take a right triangle and put that little symbol in to guarantee that this is 90 degrees. Now, let's imagine I give you this problem here. Well, first let me tell you this. Let's look at this angle and this angle. First of all, we know that all three of these angles add to 180 degrees, right? But this is 90. What's 180 subtract 90? It's 90, right? So that means this angle plus this angle is 90 degrees. And that can be useful sometimes. For example, let me write that. Let me call this angle A, and we'll call this angle B. So what I'm trying to say here is angle A plus angle B equal 90 degrees. In a right triangle, that's true. Okay. Remember, I said these two angles have to be acute, right? So a fancy way to say it is the acute angles of a right triangle are complementary. Remember, complementary means two angles add to 90. Let me write that down because that's kind of important to understand. So the acute angles of a right triangle are complementary. And complementary is just a fancy way to say they add to 90 degrees. We talk about that in our geometry course, what complementary means. So it's, for example, just on the side here, like 30 degrees and 60 degrees, we would say these two angles are complementary because when you add them together, you get 90 degrees. And similarly, like maybe 42 degrees and 48 degrees. When I add these two together, I get 90 degrees as well. So we would say these two are complementary as well. So two angles, if they add up to 90, we call them complementary, all right? Now, in a right triangle, let me just erase this here. Don't like to look at it. Need to increase my brush size anyways. In this right triangle here, these two angles are acute angles, and this is the right angle, right? So what this little statement is saying is if you take these two angles, they add up to 90, just like I wrote here. Maybe this one's a little bit easier to understand than this sentence here. But I'd like you to try to understand what this sentence means. It just means that in a kind of a more fancy language. Now, why do I talk about this? It's not really too important, but if you want to be, fast sometimes, let's say this angle here, I tell you, is I don't know, maybe 53 degrees, okay? Then I could ask you, what is the value of this angle? Now, the way we find that, it's easy, because we know that this is 90 and this is 53, so we can find this angle. And this is kind of the long way to do it, okay? The long way to do it, it would be 180, subtract 90, subtract 53, okay? And then you just work that out.